What is going on, everybody, and welcome back once again. My name is Jordan, also known as J-Monster, and thank you for joining me for another replay battle. This one is a little bit of a different speed, I think, than what we're used to. This is Seven Kingdoms Total War, a modification for Attila Total War that brings the world of the Song in Ice and Fire and George R. R. Martin's imagination to life in the Total War engine. It is everything that a strategy gamer and fantasy enthusiast could ever ask for in one neat little, easily downloadable package. So in this battle, we're going to be pitting the houses of Baratheon of Dragonstone, the Starks of Winterfell, against a very large host commanded by the Lannisters of Casterly Rock and the Tyrells of Highgarden. I hope you guys are going to enjoy it. The first army is the army of the Starks, being commanded by yours truly. I have 4 units of heavy cavalry armed with lances, a ton of guardsmen. These are like the best of the Starks have available to them. My center line is composed of guardsmen with sword and board and a number of chevrons, and on either flank I've got a couple units of guardsmen armed with spears, with one being held in reserve on my center line. As reserve units, I've got 3 or 4 units of Winterfell levies, a couple units of onagers, and 4 units of longbowmen. I've also got, yes, here he is, Robb Stark, the King in the North himself, has risen from the dead and come back to lead his forces to victory over his hated foes, the Lannisters. Over here we have the army of the House of Baratheon of Dragonstone, being commanded by Archangel. He's got a much smaller, much more elite force. You can see a lot of his units are gold chevron, making them few in number, but very, very formidable in melee. He's got, I think, 7 or 8 units of these dismounted knights, some spears as well, 4 units of Dragonstone levies armed with crossbows, a couple units of onagers, and I believe 3 generals' bodyguards, actually. So he's got Stannis Baratheon, Davos Seaworth, Renly, and I think 1 unit of Dragonstone Knights. That's pretty much it for his force. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at the army of Casterly Rock. A little bit of an engagement over here. We've got 2 knights with lances, or rather 4 knights with lances in total. A huge number of dismounted knights here to form the core of his melee line. This is being commanded by Vislak, by the way. He's also got some levies here, some Lannisters levies. They're armed with javelins. Very, very powerful. Very light, though. Obviously will fall apart in melee, but if you can get them into position, they can do a ton of work. A couple units of onagers, some men-at-arms with spears. Actually, these look more like halberds, but they are not AP. They just have, they just look really cool. A little bit of an artistic rendition of a spear. He's also got a large number of militia present in this battle, which is very surprising. He's got a ton of Lannisters levies here to form a reserve corps. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at the army of his ally. This is Highgarden, but it is primarily forces from their bannermen of Hightower. This is being commanded by Pope Flavidak. He's got 4 units, I believe, of the elite Hightower bannermen, armed with lances and swords. They're all cavalry units. He's got a ton of dismounted knights with spears, 2 units of onagers, and he's brought a huge number of pikemen. Pikemen in this mod are very, very powerful, especially when being taken head-on by melee infantry. They are extremely vulnerable to missiles, however, so we're going to have to try and leverage that against this very, very intimidating force of pikes. He's also got a ton of dismounted melee knights. These are your regular sword and board units. In addition to that, he's got 4 units of men-at-arms armed with longbows. But that's pretty well it for the army composition, so let's go ahead and let's jump right into the replay. And so it begins, this epic struggle to determine who is going to be the great house left standing. Pope Flavidak has moved his army forward. I can't actually see most of these forces at this point, but I do know that he has... Yes, he's got his onager almost into position. So I'm thinking maybe if he's gotten it a little bit farther ahead of his army, because he moved up quite quickly with it, that I might have an opportunity to sweep away that onager, thereby giving myself range superiority. But Pope Flavidak is not going to be taken unawares at this point, so he's going to start to move some of his knights with lances forward. And now I can begin to see the rest of his army formed up here on this flank. So I'm going to turn my knights around and get them out of there as quickly as possible. But not before those archers manage to open up with a nice volley that's going to go into the rear of my poor Stark bannermen, and a lot of them are going to fall in that initial volley. You can see quite a lot of them going down. Oh, it's very unfortunate, leaving behind more fodder for the Night King's army behind them on the snow. And he's now moving forward with a unit of his knights with lances. We're going to go ahead and we're going to speed it up just a little bit here. And I can see what's happening, and I don't want him to sweep away my archers, so I am just going to commit these guys and throw them right in there. And just look at the casualties. These 2 armies, or these 2 units here on the charge will absolutely devastate each other. I think the big turning point in my favor was that I managed to get the trample ability off, which allowed me to take down about half of that unit of knights on the charge. But unfortunately, now Pope Flavidak's onager has now gotten itself into position, has been to open fire on my poor longbows, who have taken quite a lot of damage there in their retreat. He's going to follow it up here with a nice charge from his knights with their lances. We're going to go ahead and we're going to slow it down just a little bit here. They can now see exactly what's waiting for them. I don't think they're too interested in charging in there all by themselves. But these guys over here, though, look at this. Very brave charge coming in from these knights with their lances, looking to flatten this poor unit of guardsmen with melee. I do not have my reserve spear units anywhere near here. What I am going to do is move in another unit of my Stark's guardsmen to try and take these guys on the flank and see if we can't at least kill some of them in return for what is undoubtedly going to be a massacre in favor of that Lannister cavalry. Or that Highgarden cavalry, rather. Over here we can see a little bit of action. Looks like the House of Baratheon, or the House Baratheon of Dragonstone, has engaged a lot of the Lannister cavalry over here in a fight in the middle of the woods. But it's starting to turn against the Baratheons. You can see them having to fight 4 units of cavalry here, slowly finding themselves overrun. The unfortunate thing for the Lannisters here, however, is that this is an overcommittal of their cavalry, which I think is going to allow the House of Dragonstone to bring in the rest of their cavalry, which it appears to be that they are doing right now, and begin to surround that large blob of Lannister cavalry. We're going to come back to that in just a second now. You can see more big artillery shots coming off into my poor center line, which is beginning to suffer quite grievously at the hands of that very accurate artillery piece. Over here we have managed to push back, it would appear, that unit of knights with lances, inflicting almost half damage on them. We're going to chase them down with some of my guardsmen. This is actually a bit of a micro mistake. I did not realize these guys were so far ahead of the army and so terribly unsupported. Really a bit of a mistake on my part, but it's not the worst thing that can happen. Over here you can see Fluffy Duck moving in with some of his dismounted knights, looking to potentially turn this cavalry fight over here in his favor. We've both maneuvered a couple units of infantry over here to help out our cavalry, not wanting to leave them alone and unsupported to do their work. And I definitely have the advantage at this point in terms of numbers over Fluffy Duck's cavalry, because he has that one unit, of course, that is down to about 42 men and is a little bit tired. But he's definitely got, I think, an advantage over here in terms of the number of infantry. And, of course, you can see a unit of what appears to be... Oh, it looks like he has some javelins as well. And he's got a unit of javelins here that I'm sure he's going to use to great effect once that cavalry fight starts. Over here, though, speaking of cavalry fights, you can see... Let's speed it up now. There we have it. The House of Dragonstone doing a really great job here at shutting down the Lannister cavalry force. There's only a couple units in there right now. Looks like Renly Baratheon himself, the ghost of Renly, has joined the fight, and you can see these Lannister horsemen now beginning to be surrounded by these very numerous and very scary cavalrymen. A lot of the Lannister forces are quite powerful. I think we have Tywin Lannister himself over here. No, never mind. It's just a very elite unit of knights. They are holding their own, but it's only going to be for a very short period of time, I think. It looks like the Lannisters now have brought in some of their longbows, trying to turn the fight in favor of their cavalry. But I think there's a lot of friendly fire going on here, and they're actually firing now into the backs of their cavalrymen, which is not going to be very good for those poor cavalrymen now being betrayed by their own allies. I think that's going to facilitate the crumbling of this cavalry force. You can see one of the units now beginning to rout. Very unfortunate for the Lannisters. Over here, though, it looks like, oh wow, that is just a beautiful catapult volley, taking out, oh man, these guys are down to 84 of 150, nearly half the unit now gone in a single catapult volley. There's a general charge here going in amongst the Stark forces. I'm just charging in to engage the front line of Fluffy Duck. He's got his dismounted knights moving forward to form the front line, essentially, of his pikemen, which I'm sure he'll begin to move forward to support those melee units. So it's a really desperate struggle over here in terms of the infantry for my Lannister guardsmen. I can see him now falling back to the safety of his men-at-arms over here with their pikes, and at the same time he's beginning to bombard more of my Winterfell levies. I'm being forced to commit my infantry, or my infantry reserves rather, in the center at this point because of how badly my troops have suffered so far fighting the Hightower men. Over here, things are going a lot nicer on the right flank. I am managing to beat back the Hightower infantry, who are very heavily outnumbered, and there's a massive cavalry charge here that went down. You can see a lot of dead cavalrymen and a huge struggle going on over here, where we've managed to tie up the majority of the Hightower cavalry, and we're beginning to destroy them. But look at this, bring in some a little bit of reinforcements here under Baelor Hightower. This is his elite general's bodyguard unit charging into the flank of my heavy cavalry with lances, and they're just doing a ton of damage to them. Look at this, this poor unit. They're not going to be able to last very long. And at this point, I think I realize just how much trouble I'm in, and I'm going to start to bring in some of my cavalry, or some of my my archers rather, and alongside some of my infantry to rout this unit of Hightower men, and then bring my combined infantry force over here to assist my cavalry, who are just suffering so terribly right now. It's really just the King in the North himself who's holding it down with his bodyguards, managing to stem the tide here of these Lannister reinforcements. You can see Pope Duck has brought in some of his old town levies, trying to use his javelins to great effect against my troops. He is finally starting to claim a few of their lives, but I think most of his kills so far have been friendly fire, unfortunately for his poor cavalrymen. These javelins don't have the greatest firing arc, so they did kind of just fire a whole bunch of volleys into the rear of his own troops, which helped wipe out his cavalry a little bit quicker. So I'm going to take Robb Stark and his bodyguard, charge them into these old town levies, try and silence them once and for all, and free up this cavalry unit for a little bit of a commando raid into the back of the enemy lines. Over here you can see a general charge here from the Lannister forces. A lot of these Lannister levies here moving forward with some of the men-at-arms looking to support his pike line, which is a very, very formidable force here. All that's really in their way to hold them back is a unit of Stark spears, and it's just not going to be enough. There's just a massive tide of red surging forward now, and looks like it's going to be down to the House of Dragonstone, who's coming in with some of their very elite dismounted knights, moving in to try and check this Lannister advance. Otherwise, they're going to break our center to pieces, and we're going to be in a ton of trouble. They have broken through over here with some of their Lannisport levies, looking to take down my guardsmen with their longbows. So I'm going to try and fall them back a little bit to give my archers a little bit of space rather, to begin to fire on these guys. I've got a unit of guardsmen coming over in here to try and cover that retreat, and hopefully these guys will do, I think, very well against these Lannisport levies. There's a lot of the levies, but these guardsmen are more than capable, I think, of taking these guys on in close combat. Look at this. Look at the destruction they are causing to these Lannisport levies. Quite a lot of them are dying in combat to those Stark men-at-arms. Over here, I've managed to rout some of the high tower infantry in the center, so we're managing to pull things back a little bit, which does leave them wide open. I've got a unit of Stark guardsmen over here with spears. This is a bit of a micro mistake. I did not actually see that they had gotten this far, and they have an opportunity here to silence this onager. They're just really not taking advantage of us. That's a big mistake, I think, on my part. Over here in the center, we have managed to beat back the high tower infantry at least a little bit. I think a lot of that might be due to some friendly fire and a little bit of counter artillery fire from our troops over here as well. So these men-at-arms here being outflanked, they're doing pretty well against my troops from the front, but there is some more of them here that are going to be able to come in. Oh no, actually they've been routed. Look at this. They're now fleeing from that engagement, but I do have a nice shot here with my onagers, so I might be able to pull that engagement back from the brink. My longbow's a little bit scattered. I think they're trying to reform here, maybe to fire into the front of these knights and these pikemen, or into the flank of these troops over here. Robb Stark now moving in to try and take on some of these archers here and disrupt the high tower skirmish line, but unfortunately he has been outflanked and charged from the rear by, I believe this is Baelor Hightower himself. So the King in the North suffering quite grievously. There is a little bit of reinforcements coming in over here in the form of some of these Stark Lancers. They are quite elite at this point. They've killed quite a lot. And I think they're going to do a lot of damage to those poor high tower men. And yeah, they're suffering quite badly. You can see them beginning to lose in the face of that cavalry charge. I'm also bringing up some guardsmen to try and consolidate that push, but at the same time, he is bringing up some of his pikes who are going to be able to flank my guardsmen. They're going to get in the way of the charge and prevent these guys from joining the fight immediately, but it is going to, I think, be a good thing for us ultimately, because we are going to be able to clip off a little bit of that pike unit. From the rear, you can see some of my Starkmen with longbows firing into the rear of these pikemen at arms, and they're really going to suffer in the face of a three-pronged assault, essentially, from the Stark cavalrymen. Actually, never mind, they are routing now, but a two-pronged offensive in that case from the Stark guardsmen and the bowmen firing into their rear. So at this point, the balance of power definitely in our favor. The Lannisters having a hard time, I think, holding back the very elite gold chevron units of Archangel, who's now just pushing through here, slaughtering Lannister men left and right, doing a really great job. So we're going to slow it down just a little bit here so you can see some of the action. It looks like many of the men-at-arms have been routed. Many of them are now shattered, and House Baratheon of Dragonstone closing the gap, closing in for the kill here. It looks like the Lannister artillery positions now have been overrun, and their bowmen here, the skirmish line in general, in full retreat, fleeing in the face of that massive, overwhelming Baratheon advance. Over here, my guardsmen with spears have charged in, trying to silence that onager, which they've done an admirable job of doing. But the Lannisters have moved in some of the Lannisport levies here to try and hold them back, and my Stark spearmen are now extremely outnumbered. Over here, it looks like, yeah, some more of the Lannisport levies have now been driven back. Back here, you can see some of them getting in amongst my skirmish line. I've got my guardsmen with longbows here on the run. But pretty soon we're going to turn them around. We're just going to fight because I realize that these are not the heavy Lannisport footmen. They are just, in fact, just some of the militia units. It looks like we have a little bit of supporting fire coming in over here from those longbows. Now they're going to get a volley off, and these guys are going to stop running and turn around to fight these levies who are now shaken and probably going to start to run pretty soon. Over here, my honor guard now completely out of ammunition. I think it might have gotten destroyed, in fact, by the Hightower infantry. You can see with the other crew now moving forward to take on some of the men-at-arms with longbows in close combat. Not going to be a fair fight at all for these poor Onager men. But over here, my Stark Guardsmen really doing a lot of work. They have destroyed these pikemen at arms who unfortunately found themselves out of formation and shot up by a unit of pikemen, or unit of bowmen rather, from the rear. So that's going to be pretty much the end. Take a quick look at the tactical map here. You can see most of the Lannister slash Hightower force now on the run, fleeing off the field of battle, and my army is essentially gone. However, the Hightowers and I destroyed one another completely. We really don't have a lot left for either side. But over here, House Baratheon of Dragonstone, very healthy. You can see them charging through these trees on fire, looking to take down their hated Lannister rivals and the supporters of the false king, Joffrey and Tommen Baratheon. Oh man, I don't know where that came from, but definitely a welcome sight, I think, for the Lannisters, getting a little bit of artillery support here from I think one of their last remaining artillery pieces. These Lannister forces here now being routed by these dismounted knights. Looking pretty worse for wear, though. These three units here have taken a lot of casualties fighting a massive Lannister force, but ultimately they have come out victorious. That's going to be pretty much the end, I think, for the Lannister Tyrell alliance. We know now who is the true power in Westeros. Stannis Baratheon, the one true king, and of course Robb Stark, the king of the North. We're going to fast forward just a little bit here. You can see these Lannister forces now routing, fleeing for their lives in the face of a superior Dragonstone force sent by King Stannis Baratheon. Oh man, these poor men-at-arms now routing, fleeing for their lives, taking a ton of damage, trying to get out of combat with those melee knights. Unfortunately for them, not a battle they're going to live to see the end of. Many of them have now been routed. So a Pyrrhic victory. My Stark forces took a ton of damage. Let's take a look at the screen here. You can see my losses were almost total. I lost about 3,000 of my warriors in the face of the army of Pope Fluffy Duck. He's got a ton of kills here as well. You see most of his melee knights doing really well. 164 kills on one of his pikeman units. 208 on another. That's very devastating. Let's take a look now at the Vistak Archangel matchup. Archangel didn't really take all that many casualties, but look at the damage that his infantry did. Those gold chevron infantry really pulling their own weight despite their low numbers. Over here, the Westermen not doing quite so well. Some of his melee forces, like these spearmen here, did really nicely. 179 in that unit, but others, like these guys, 29 on a pike unit, not the best for the Lannisters. This militia unit, though, look at that, 118 kills. I think they were fighting potentially some of my lighter troops. But ultimately, the day was won, and I hope you guys enjoyed this battle. Coming up next, we're going to have another replay. Actually, I have a ton of replays that we're going to be doing next week, or I suppose this week now. But I also want to take a moment to tell you guys about something, because we're quickly getting to that point where it's going to become important. When I get to 1,000 subscribers, I am going to do a 24-hour Twitch stream. I'm going to be playing a ton of games with everybody who's supported my channel over the many years that I've been doing it. And because it's such a huge milestone, we're actually going to be doing a giveaway as well. It's going to be at least one copy of every game that we play that's going to be available up for grabs for at least one lucky person. But yeah, that's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you later. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye!